Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our weekly object talk. My name is Eliana, and I'm a member of the learning team at the Jewish Museum. Today, you're joining us for an object talk connected to the festival of Shavuot, which was on Monday and Tuesday of this week. This week, I'll be exploring a mounted photographic illustration by Simeon Solomon and Frederick Hollier of Ruth from the Book of Ruth in the Hebrew Bible. This object is part of the Jewish Museum's designated collection of over 40,000 objects that show the diversity of Jewish life and history, and our programs exist to explore the connections between faiths and cultures. I will share my screen so that we can look at the object together. This object is a photographic print from 1879 of a title page for illustrations of scenes in the Book of Ruth, illustrated by Simeon Solomon, a pre-Raphaelite artist, and it was photographed by Frederick Hollier. Simeon Solomon, 1840 to 1905, illustrated and sketched many pieces of work inspired by stories from the Hebrew Bible. Examples include the meeting of Rachel and Jacob, the story of Noah, and the relationship between David and Jonathan. After all, initial main themes of pre-Raphaelite art were religious imagery. Pre-Raphaelite artwork was inspired by the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood principles, which emphasized nature and realism for inspiration in artwork. These principles followed the theories of John Ruskin, a key art critic of the Victorian period, and they centered around looking to nature. This led to art by pre-Raphaelites taking on subjects of religious importance, also from literature and poetry, with themes that explored love and death. In this particular object, we can see strong influences from all of the themes previously mentioned. We can see the strong influence of nature as an inspiration here. We can see that Ruth has been drawn with grain, that she has collected, probably because much of the Book of Ruth happens during the harvest, and it is a very important part of the story. The Book of Ruth is read on the Jewish festival of Shavuot. Shavuot historically is a combination of two key religious observances. It's one of the three pilgrimage festivals of ancient Israel. And also we celebrate the giving of the Torah to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai 7 weeks after leaving Egypt. And this time period is marked by the counting of the Omer calendar, which starts during the festival of Passover. The Book of Ruth is part of the Hebrew Bible. Traditionally, Ruth is seen as the first person to convert to Judaism, and the story tells of her commitment and the sacrifices she made to become part of the Jewish people. It is read aloud in synagogue as an example of Ruth's commitment to Judaism. The Ten Commandments are also read aloud at this time. The story of Ruth starts with Naomi, who was an Israelite woman and who had been living in the country of Moab. When her husband and 2 sons died, Naomi decided to return to her hometown of Bethlehem. Her 2 daughters-in-law, also now widows, were called Ruth and Orpah. Ruth and Orpah were Moabites, not Israelites, and initially Naomi assumed that because of this, neither woman would want to accompany her back to Bethlehem. Orpah decided to stay in Moab, but Ruth decided to accompany Naomi back to Bethlehem, saying, "Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." And this is from Ruth 1:16-17. Although there is no ritual for conversion as there is today, Ruth is identified as the first person to choose to become part of the Jewish faith. Once in the land of Judah, Ruth met a kind landowner named Boaz, who encouraged her to take from his fields. He explained to her the law of Peah, that a farmer should not cut the corners of his field, the law of Leket, that a farmer cannot go back and cut missed grain, and the law of Shikha, that a farmer cannot go back and collect forgotten grain. And these Jewish laws allowed Ruth to collect food for herself and Naomi. Ruth and Boaz eventually married, and their descendants became famous in Jewish history. Their great-grandson was King David. The festival of Shavuot actually marks the birthday and anniversary of the passing of King David, which is also another reason why we read this book of Ruth on this festival. It contains the story of his ancestry. Traditionally, Judaism is not a religion that encourages conversion to the faith. The Torah instructs that if someone would like to convert to Judaism, it is an obligation for us to instruct them in the difficulty of the responsibility of maintaining the mitzvot, the commandments in the Torah. After this, if the person is still keen to convert and embrace Judaism wholly, then of course the person can follow the path of conversion. Due to the nature of the variety of Jewish communities, different communities have different acceptable reasons, approaches, processes, and lengths of time for the conversion to Judaism. The conversion process always ends in a ritual. Entering the mikveh, the Jewish ritual bath, and often for men, the addition of a brit milah, circumcision. The story of Ruth is not only symbolic for those who would like to convert to Judaism, but with the celebration of the giving of the Torah during the festival of Shavuot, it also reminds the Jewish people of their own reaffirmation of faith once they received the responsibility of the Torah after their departure from Egypt and all the laws that came with it. After all, the tradition of eating dairy on Shavuot comes from the notion that once the kashrut laws were given with the Torah, Jewish people were not prepared to kosher meat in the correct way, and so to avoid breaking laws, they ate only dairy. And today, a particular tradition is to have cheesecake on Shavuot. Thank you so much for joining me today for this object talk. Do join us again next week at the same time for another one. Goodbye now.